Have you ever received really bad advice? I'm sure you have. This was the same question that I asked of my audience, and a couple of you have answered. So we're going to look at those comments now, and we're going to ask the tarot to reflect on the bad advice that you've received, to see if we can learn something from this, to see if we can turn a negative into a positive. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and let's get started. Thank you for being here. I hope that you are subscribed if you enjoy this type of content. If you like my channel, please make sure that you are. And if you would like to support the channel, the best way to do it is by booking a reading with me on my website. Find the details in the description. Okay, so we are going to start with some bad advice that Bogey's father had received when her mom passed away when she was 17. So I'm paraphrasing the comment, but the advice that was given to her father was that he shouldn't worry about Bogey because she would survive by herself, even on the Arctic. So that's obviously bad advice because the loss of a parent, the death of a loved one, especially when you're a child, that's not something that you should just white knuckle. It's not a suck it up type situation. It's something that is very delicate and it requires a lot of care and attention. And it's just natural that when you go through something like this as a child, you would deserve and need attention anyway. But under those extreme circumstances, especially. So when your father was told that he should not worry about you, I think, let's see where that came from. So maybe it didn't come from a malicious place. It probably didn't, but let's see what the misconception here was. Okay. And we have the Two of Pentacles. So that immediately makes me think that it comes from a practical approach. So an approach that only considers the material and does not have the depth and the understanding required to tune into the deeper layers of the self, the deeper layers of the soul. So whoever came up with this advice was looking at the superficial layers of the situation. She seems to be fine. She's not crying. She's not breaking down, whatever. She's fine. So whoever was assessing the situation didn't intend to go deeper with it and was kind of, and they were kind of caught in the appearance, in what is obvious and what is visible to the naked eye. The Two of Pentacles is the card of balance, how there's compensatory processes in life, how there's a polarity that carries us, and how there's spontaneous healing, which does happen. So on that front, your father's friend, or whoever it was kind of on the right path, saying that you have a lot of authority, even as a child, to heal yourself. But that does not mean that you should completely abandon this child and not pay attention to the process itself and not stay open to the child's requests. So even though children have a great ability to to rebalance themselves, they need help in the process. So yeah, it's a kind of an objectifying view that I'm getting from this, looking at children as if they were material elements of one's life and not sentient beings, but problems to be solved. So the friend who gave this advice did not detect a problem to be solved, but it's a very reductive, very simplistic way of looking at it. So they were definitely wrong about that, but this is not something that should define you. And now you have the ability, Bogi, to seek therapies, to support yourself, to find good ways, healthy ways of coping with your trauma. So you no longer need to experience this abandonment. Obviously, it's very difficult to change and to recover from these impulses or these memories, these patterns. But I wish you the best, and I hope that you are making progress with it. Okay, let's see the next one. The next one is by Margaret. One of the worst pieces of advice that I absorbed is that I should keep my feelings to myself and to deal with my problems on my own. I still struggle with this as an adult, but as a child it was very difficult for me just to say that I needed help without me feeling guilty about it. Yeah, so I think this is very similar. Comes from a very similar place of convenience for the adults, which is really not fair. The child is not there to be convenient for the parent. It's not, it's not a piece of furniture. The child, it's a living, breathing, very vulnerable, very fragile little being that needs to be protected at all costs. And some adults, especially the older generations, I think, just did not really look at it that way. Okay, so let's see. You should keep your feelings to yourself and deal with your problems on your own. It's very, very cruel advice. Okay, and it comes from the King of Swords. So it's this exclusively cerebral, rational, sort of masculine and patriarchal point of view that someone would tell you to deal with your problems on your own. It's again, it's an inability to tune into the delicate and albeit very real landscape of emotions. It's the inability to resonate with what is felt, the experience of life, and looking at life in these very abstract, very sterile terms. So the King of Swords lives in his head. The King of Swords is a problem solver, someone who makes decisions based on what is logical and what makes sense on that level, in that sense. And the King of Swords is often blind to that aspect of ourselves that feels, that has emotions, that is irrational. Of course, there's a logic to our psychology, but it's not as clean-cut. It's not as quantifiable. It's not as a black and white as the King of Swords would like it to be. So this advice comes from an inability to have a complex and intricate view of the world. It comes from the desire to control everything by way of fitting it into an ideological system. So the King of Swords' ideology in this situation is that you need to do what is convenient for me. You need to act in a way so as to not create discomfort, so as to fit into the structure that is already built for you, and to think along the lines and within the restrictions that I set for you. So it comes from this place, and obviously it's very, very toxic, very injurious to the soul to grow up in a situation like this. But we're here to recover from this, and it's a good thing that so many people are waking up to the reality of emotions nowadays. Okay, let's look at Eleni's experience. Okay, Eleni, hands down, the worst advice I've ever received is to constantly work and grind until I achieve my goals. I think this hustle culture is toxic and teaches us to prioritize work over self-care. Couldn't agree more. Okay, yeah, that's terrible advice. Let's see where that comes from. Do we have justice? Okay. So the first thought that comes to my mind is justifying your existence. So unless you are involved in doing something quote-unquote useful, there might be a feeling of, do I even deserve to be here? It's that idea of reward and punishment, and that the whole universe somehow revolves around this idea of divine credit that you either lose or receive based on your actions. Justice is a card that has very strong connections to the idea of karma. So the idea is that what you do is what defines you, basically. What you do is what you materialize in your next life, something along those lines. So there's a direct correlation between how good or how the patterns of your life unfold based on what you do. Now, that is an idea that I've come to detest over the years. I don't think that we live in a punitive universe. I don't think the point of life is to receive the scolding of gods and to continuously feel less than and inadequate, and to try to develop ourselves. I don't think that's the point. The point is to enjoy ourselves, to learn to be free, to learn to experience the flow of living, of simply being. So, you know, I'm receiving these flashes of ideas right now of how the Industrial Revolution and you know, the current school system, at least in my country and in many countries that I know that are modern countries otherwise, but are incredibly disadvantaged in terms of the education system. So good grades and bad grades don't exist in real life. The idea of you have to do something does not exist in real life. what we're being taught as children, and what I think this grind culture is it's propagating the idea that you don't deserve to be here. And I don't think that's true. I think that's a lie. I think that's manipulation that is used to make you more obedient and to control you. I think that loving yourself unconditionally and enjoying the moment guilt-free is the goal. It's not to become perfect or to do a perfect job of anything. The goal, I think, is not to not make mistakes, but to accept the mistakes when they happen and to love ourselves regardless. Okay, let's have one more. Bunny. One of the worst pieces of advice I've ever received was not to be insecure of my body type, because at least I don't have insert different body type here. Doesn't make me feel better to put other people down, especially since I don't even believe it myself. Okay. Well, that's some really, really bad advice, because it just feeds into the same energy of shaming that you're trying to escape, that you're trying to resolve. It's really bad advice. Okay, so let's see where that comes from and what we can do with it. Okay, so we have the 10 of Pentacles. All right, so again, I think this is a very materialistic view, and that's the biggest problem with it. People often get stuck on the superficial level of looking at things and are kind of resistant to delving deep and seeing what is beyond the world of phenomena. And also, the problem with these types of advice is looking for a quick fix. So the person that you were speaking to, perhaps, they were feeling a sense of discomfort when you were talking about your own insecurities. Obviously, we are empathetic beings, and whoever told this to you was probably also coming from a place of empathy and wanting to enrich you somehow and reinstate stability within you. And they did it with these really primitive tools that were at their disposal at that time. But at any rate, I think it came from an inability to deal with the pain or the insecurity that is at the core of the idea that I feel ashamed, insecure of my body type. And they were looking for something easy, something that's kind of like, fast food for the soul. And what they found was, hey, at least you are not as effed up as another person. So I've always thought that that was the worst way of looking at it. Comparing yourself to others is really the worst way of doing the, at least I'm not this and that. You can do the comparison. I think comparisons are very useful, but you need to compare yourself to yourself. You need to compare different versions of yourself. Hey, at least I'm not as bad as that version of myself that was, let's say, struggling with something at some point, and I no longer have to struggle with that. That's a more positive thought. But at any rate, with the 10 of Pentacles, I think what this advice was built on is the need for instant stability, the need for the structure, the system to work seamlessly. When you exist in a state of denial or a state of superficiality, and our society, I'm very unhappy to say, but it's true, our society is mostly built on those appearances, on those superficialities. So when you exist in this system of constantly pretending that everything is fine and everything needs to be this, this oiled machine that you're just a tiny little part of, and you don't really matter as an individual. When you exist in this context, other people, other little parts of this pyramid, of this structure, are going to try to push you back into that, or force you into that sense of collective consciousness, of the factory, of the collective, where let's go back to pretending, let's go back to everything is fine, let's go back to I am secure, I am stable, no matter what. It's this toxic positivity, I think, that is really reflected in the advice that this person has given you. So yeah, it's definitely not good advice. And like I said, I think a better version of that is comparing yourself to yourself. This is something that I do often, and I think maybe that could be a source of gratitude, because as you go forward in life, a lot of things go wrong, but there are at least a handful of things that you can think of, that you can identify, that are definitely better than they were in the past. And when you spend a little bit of time reflecting on those things, how they used to be a big issue for you, how they used to make your life hell, and how they are nowhere to be found anymore. If you find at least a couple of those things every day and spend your time thinking about how awful it used to be and how much better it is now, I think that generates trust in yourself. It generates a sense of gratitude, and it also satiates the need to compare, because obviously we're human beings, so we want to do comparisons. Analogies and comparisons is how we understand the world, how we process the world, and this could be a healthier version of that. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure that you're subscribed. Like this video if you liked it. Leave a comment, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.